Good morning, Madam Deputy Speaker, and good morning to all present, and good morning to Barbadians here and in the diaspora, and indeed during this tourist season. Good morning to all visitors whom we are happy to welcome. I rather expected a longer presentation from the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, and in so disappointing me with a very short delivery, I want to say to you, Your Honour, that the most outstanding feature of what we've heard this morning from the Honourable Member is a presentation that reflects not much on the written document that he's brought here today. As I always say to you, I sat here and I took notes. I was moving between the document and recording what was being said orally by the Honourable Member. And I have to say to you, Your Honour, that what was being said orally by the Honourable Member, some of which I wrote, reflects very little of what is in the written document. I see it, therefore, as my responsibility to inform the public as to what has come here in writing, and I will reflect also on the oral anecdotes. That is what I call them. These days he chooses the anecdotal path. A few weeks ago, I accused the Honourable Member of abandoning his characteristic technocratic propensities and becoming more of a politician. Not that being a politician is a bad thing. I hope we are all politicians. But we do expect our politicians who are also technocrats, highly trained, as is the Honourable Member, to reflect something of the training that he has and something of the training that justifies his occupation of the office that he holds. But here is what I record. I feel obliged to deal with the written document, and I will deal with that because the public is entitled to hear what is written in this document. As I said, we did not hear much of what is written in the document because the Honourable Member now has a different course of conduct in here. That I wouldn't say that he jokes a lot these days, but the anecdotes, we hear that he doesn't have any hair now, and I don't think the public, not even his former barber, is interested in the fact that he no longer has any hair. What is important to this country is what is here, H-E-R-E, what is written here. And what is written here does not speak well for the future prospects of this country. In avoiding the written document, maybe it's embarrassment, maybe the Honourable Member is embarrassed to tell the country what is the true state of this economy. And in expressing that embarrassment, he goes to these Ponzi schemes. When the Honourable Member went to the Ponzi scheme, the word that appeared before me was sanctimony. Let me quote him. Let us put these schemes and scams behind us. These sanctimonious interventions, you're supposed to come to a house and deliver of yourself seriously as to the state of the economy. And at the center of your delivery is a reference to Ponzi schemes, and that is supposed to be the greatest national issue, the greatest national economic issue that is confronting this country. Let us put these schemes and scams behind us. What we will not put behind us and what this country will not put behind it is the mismanagement and the poor management of this economy. What we will not put behind us, Your Honor, is the fact that this economy is on the road to failure. And it is on the road to failure because government's economic policies are inadequate for prudent management of any economy, including this one. We will hear shortly that most of our Caribbean neighbors are experiencing real growth, and that they have been experiencing real growth since that benchmark occasion of the COVID pandemic. But I recorded the honorable member, again, curious language on the question of growth. Here's what my record says as to what the honorable member told this country today, and I quote, "We must make the growth that we are seeing in the economy real." Ma'am, may I read that again? "We must make the growth that we are seeing in the economy real." Well, I am not an economist. The overwhelming majority of Barbadians are not economists. But we are still entitled to ask the honorable member, how is it that we may be seeing growth, but it is not real? We don't know. That is why I said he seems to have abandoned his technocratic training, his propensity, and his learning, which we have never questioned. I respect him. I do respect him. He's a man highly trained. But he comes here this morning and tells the people of this country that we are seeing growth, but the time has come to make it real. Well, he will get up and explain after I speak what he means by that. And so he began on the Ponzi schemes, a distraction. A distraction. How have the Ponzi schemes, or the Ponzi scheme, affected government's ability to manage this economy? How have the Ponzi schemes affected the lack of access that the majority of people in this country have to government's generosity? How have those schemes affected that? That is why I'm saying to you, Your Honor, it is a distraction. And the people of Barbados must ignore that distraction. This presentation has nothing and ought to have nothing to do with the presence of any Ponzi scheme, whether present or past. Beg your pardon, ma'am. Let us put these schemes and scams behind us. If I were the politician that the honorable member has now become, I would give different definition to the schemes and scams that are with us. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. All I would repeat is that this presentation this morning, apart from being disappointing, is sanctimonious. What Ponzi scheme, what? We're not interested in those. That is not at the heart of this government's failure. But I quoted him again. I wrote another quote of the honorable members. He said, social programs. Oh, there are various social programs, but I will not go into that. Again, in a statement that is meant to give Barbadians some hope that the government is attending seriously to this economy. The question of Ponzi schemes becomes prioritized over social programs. And the reason the honorable member could not speak to social programs or refuse to speak to social programs is because they're largely inadequate. And even if they are present, there's nothing much to report about on them. Football, the football that began and ended a few weeks ago. What next? Tell the young men in this country Those who got the $100,000 and those who did not, and those who are still owed the $75 per match that they were supposed to be paid. Tell them how that social program lasting, 6 weeks? How has it transformed the life of the average Barbadian? How has it transformed the life of the average young man in this country? Many of whom went to the Oval a few weeks ago. But the honorable member, quite cleverly, chooses not to go into any details on social programs. If there was any social program to which he referred, again, the technique of avoidance. The honorable member found himself in an awkward position when he started to speak of the social virtue of education. And somehow he attempted to take credit for some initiative in the 1950s, he said. We focused on education in the 1950s. Now you come to Barbadians in 2024 and try to convey to them that the most transformative moment in education occurred in the 1950s. And you come to literate, intelligent, and honest Barbadians and avoid any contact with 1961. The earlier word was sanctimony. The present word is disingenuous. And that is why the honorable member says, I'm not going to go into any of these social programs, but he pauses to tell you that the high point in education occurred in the 1950s. That statement in itself disqualifies the presentation this morning. You come in this country, in this parliament, and talk about education, and don't talk about 1961. How is that possible? But it characterizes the short intervention that we heard this morning. I was expecting to sit here for an hour and a half, at least 2 hours, and listen to a presentation dissecting economic policy and telling Barbadians why they should continue to have confidence in this government. Anecdotes. I don't have any more hair, and my grandmother left school at 14. Let us focus on the bricks and the mortar. And then towards the end, I wonder how the media will treat this. That the high point of his speech was when he advised every Barbadian to buy a barrel of rum. The honorable member for Christchurch East Central reached the high point of his speech this morning when he advised every Barbadian to buy a barrel of rum. Now, when we thought that he was going to associate that advice with the season, he deviated from that expected path and told them, no. That also is a good investment. So you buy, every Barbadian is now advised by a serious Minister of Finance to go down to wherever they sell them, Spring Garden, I don't know, buy a barrel of rum and put it somewhere in your house. When I first heard him, in 2018, at Secretary, I used to listen very carefully because, as I said, he was the ultimate technocrat. He was very serious and he was very committed to his subject. But his public discourse, from lofty economics and financial and fiscal policy, and it has now reduced to the economic advice of asking every Barbadian to buy a barrel of rum. And I don't know, Your Honor, how you feel about that advice, but I would advise you not to take it. What are you going to do with your barrel of rum if you accept the advice of your learned colleague? But that is where the speech took Barbadians. And therefore, it becomes our responsibility, even in opposition, to tell the government what is written in this document and to compare and contrast this document against their everyday reality. It begins as usual. I'm going to read it. That is my responsibility. Overview, and I'm not going to read it exhaustively. I will just introduce you, ma'am, to a few of the sentences. And the opening sentence under the rubric overview is typical. The Barbadian, and I quote, "The Barbadian economy has weathered a global pandemic, natural disasters, and high global inflationary pressures through transitory public financial support." You know, I've been hearing that in here for the last 6 years. There used to be a poem written in here about, in every speech, this poem was recited, the dust storm and the, I don't remember the name of the hurricane, but it used to be the dust storm, the hurricane, a few thousand bolts of lightning, and some other major calamity to which every member used to refer, and that was the clarion call for constructive debate in here. You know, in 2024, and if it be the will of God, moving into 2025, a major statement on the economy is still burdened with that quality of debate that all the other countries in the Caribbean have gotten up from their slumber during COVID, and many of them are recording economic growth that is satisfactory, and they're recording growth in the various sectors that is satisfactory. But here in Barbados, we still, like the little child saying his recitation at the harvest, and we begin every recitation with the Barbadian economy having weathered a global pandemic, natural disasters, and high global inflationary pressures. What is the government doing about it? What is the government doing about it? We'll read this document and indicate what the government wants to do about it and how the government is failing. Permit me, Your Honor. So my advice, please, Barbadians, don't go off yet and buy that barrel of rum. Let us seriously discuss the issues that confront your lives. Now, I did not expect the honorable member to apologize for this statement that is some 3.5 months late. He did remind us that this country has had a global pandemic affecting this country worse than our neighbors. But let me indicate to Barbadians that this exercise today is some 3.5 months late. And if we go into its details, I will do so. But I want to come to page 9. This, what we see here, the first portion of the document is some 37 pages. Yes, some 37, I think, several pages. And I want to say to you, Your Honor, that the presentation this morning touched very, very few of those pages. And indeed, it was an unsatisfactory overview of an economy, and I repeat, which reached its high point of the honorable member for Christchurch East Central telling Barbadians that they should all go off today and buy a barrel of rum. So that is at the heart of economic strategy in this country. Go and buy a barrel of rum. And that is what this government leaves with Barbadians, when it ought to be seriously discussing 2025 after one of the most difficult years in the history of this country. And the difficulty had nothing to do with any dust storm or COVID or beryl, because this was a year in which government found itself in celebratory mood and encouraged the citizens of this country to believe that life is a party and a celebration and a football tournament. But yet, every document begins with this excuse that this government is in some way hindered by natural disasters. Look around the Caribbean and see how they're hindered by these natural disasters. I am going to introduce this public, to government's policies. And it was government's policies that destroyed the value of pension funds in this country. Had nothing to do with COVID, nor Hurricane Beryl. It was Hurricane government that reduced interest on income from pension funds, and the result of that is that there must be a dependence on the NIS in future to top up those depleted pension entitlements. And we will not forget that it was this government in a restructuring program that took the value of $1 billion out of the People's NIS Fund, so that it was deliberate government policy that weakened the prospects for pensioners in this country. Had nothing to do with any barrel of rum. So that government has been the hurricane that has blown away the prosperity of pensions in this country. And I will say what we all know, that this government had to increase the age of pensioners, or pension entitlement, increase the age of pension entitlement to rescue itself from its maladministration that destroyed the pension funds of this country, not only in terms of interest, but in terms of the reserve, $1 billion written off. And I don't mind repeating that you paid $2.27 million US to give that kind of advice. I'm not going to go away from that. But let me press on with my critique. Apparently the biggest sin I'm committing now in this country is to criticize the government. That's the biggest sin I'm committing. That last week, I came in here and sat here and heard the most vicious, vile, pernicious, and malicious lie told about me. And I will not respond to its detail. Neither will I resile. I say this every week, and I'm going to say it every week. Neither will I resile from my public responsibility to critique this government and its policies. No lie will deter me. And then 2 weeks before that, similar personal attacks. Well, this is not any personal attack on the honorable member for Christchurch East Central. I only attack him with the assertion that I believe that he is a competent economist. And that I believe that the result of governmental policy has embarrassed him into a position in which he cannot speak well of this government's economic performance, economic policies, and therefore he must pursue the anecdotal path. And we must hear all kinds of trivia All kinds of trivia. I don't want to repeat it. About Ponzi schemes and social programs into which he will not go, and a reference to education, the revolution of education in this country, and you don't touch 1961. That's why I said the honorable member has become a politician. He has become a politician, whatever that means. And by that I mean a politician purely who will not make contact with the realities that visit the lives of Barbadians from day to day. So I don't attack him personally. I don't attack anybody in here personally. I have a job to do, and y'all can, you can, look, I'm going to do it, ma'am. I'm going to do it. They could tell me all kinds of things about myself, tell all kinds of lies on me. A nasty lie. It was a nasty lie. And I can't get up in here and tell the truth. Let him go and prepare all the videos and of my speeches. All of my speeches on Facebook. I ain't take down one of them. I speak on principle. The people of this country are entitled to ask this government if the foreign exchange earnings are growing at the same rate as foreign borrowing. Every man and woman in Barbados has spent this year complaining about government's policy of borrowing. And I remember sometime last year, a certain member got up in here praising the growth of the foreign exchange component of government's wealth in the aftermath of a loan. How do you do that? You're going to borrow money and congratulate yourself for getting the loan? And that is why we ask the question of government's foreign reserves, how much comes from foreign borrowing? In other words, stop congratulating yourself, government, for having what you consider healthy foreign reserves without telling the people of this country what percentage of those foreign reserves come from borrowing. I did not say begging, although there are people in Barbados who feel that this government has now reduced itself to an international beggar under the guise of climate change. That is how a lot of people in this country feel, and a lot of people in this country feel that the government has been derelict in its duty to get this local economy going. And I'm going to say today how this economy needs to get going and why it needs to get going, and in whom must the investment be made. A 6-week football competition don't do anything for this economy. It does not. Building fences around the recreational areas in the villages of this country does nothing for this economy. Absolutely nothing. But that is why the honorable member for Christchurch East Central, and I'm going to continue to say it, must now reduce the content of his speeches to a dialectal enterprise. Perhaps it is charming. Perhaps Bajan dialect is charming in political discourse. A lot of others do it. It has some charm. But I want to move away from that charm and move to the written document here this morning. I'll do that shortly. But I will just run through these concerns. We've asked about the loan component of the foreign exchange earnings. We want to ask this government about its commitment to the crime that is afflicting this country. Look, what happened this year and what is happening today is the worst crisis this country has experienced post-independence. There's a dread about life in this country, and that dread is related to crime, and rampant crime, and dangerous crime, and nasty crime. And crime that now affects every Barbadian, if not directly, indirectly through the fear that he experiences as a victim. And what has been this government's response? We saw the results of that response a few Fridays ago, thanks to journalism. We saw 4 young men, and I'm going to come to that. Hardly a speech here is completed unless I hear, oh, we need to have a conversation. Well, let us have the conversation today. I'll come to that. So that this report says nothing about resources committed to those who are involved in crime. No mention of community development, which must be related to the issue of crime. We're going to ask this government why its export-led growth focuses only on tourism. And of course, the construction that is associated with it. And we will ask the government, having asked that question, we will ask the government how much foreign exchange is acquired from the attempts to grow the tourism sector. These are questions that serious economists, like the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, in a serious moment, he will ask himself among his colleagues who are economists, not his colleagues who are sweet-talking politicians, but among his colleagues who are economists, he will want to reflect as to how much foreign exchange is being truthfully gained from that sole commitment to tourism. I don't disrespect the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central, who's the Minister of Tourism. He has a job to do. But we have the right to ask questions. What is the real gain? What is the real gain? And we're not anti-tourism, but we have warned this government for this entire year to diversify this economy. And while asking the government to diversify this economy, this government has pursued a path of development solely dedicated to the construction of hotels and villas. They're going up even while I speak. And we came here last week to give concessions to those persons who not only construct and furnish, but who now wish to renovate their villas. It therefore must be a plank of government's economic policy to assist those persons who are investing millions of dollars, their dollars, in tourism. What happened to agriculture? You grabbed the people's sheep and sent them to Guyana. We finished with the sheep, and one member here attempts to scoff at that. You could hardly drive around Barbados now and see the people's black belly sheep all gone down to Guyana. Well, not all, a lot. And a Guyanese member of parliament came here a few weeks ago and said that there has been no sighting of these sheep. The gentleman who was put on an aircraft to go to look for the sheep and come back and report to this country has not reported to this country what has happened to those sheep, except that we heard a few weeks ago they want some more. So I don't know who in Guyana eating mutton at the expense of a Barbadian industry. They like the mutton. It tastes good. Tastes better than the New Zealand sheep. Somebody in the Caribbean, somebody in Guyana likes mutton more than most people. So we are destroying a local industry that is an important part of the agricultural industry, and giving massive concessions for the construction, furnishing, and since last week, the renovation of villas. So that if the public is in any doubt as to where this government's focus is located, they can get angry with me. They can get angry with me for telling the truth, and the truth of this government's policy is that the rich are receiving preferential treatment in this country. Curse me for that. The greatest man that ever walked this earth sacrificed his life for telling the truth. So character assassination is small compared with that. Curse me. Every week, come and curse me. Come and curse me. And when you curse me, the people of Barbados understand that for telling the truth, you're cursing them too. The green economy. Green economy. While I was listening to the Honorable Member for Christchurch East Central, he used the word buzzword. He said that I didn't get the sentence. I was between the written document, writing my notes, and trying to hear what he was saying. So I didn't record that one, but I heard it. And he spoke of buzzwords. And that was ironic, because one of the buzzwords around here is the green economy, and when we're not on the green economy, we're on blue economy. And when we're not on the green or blue economy, no discussion here ends unless we hear the word resilience. We're all resilient. Everything now is resilient in Barbados. Prior to resilience, everything was sustainable. So I don't know if God brings us into 2025, what will be the buzzword then? But we used to be sustainable. 2024, we were resilient. And Barbadians, I want you all to understand that there's a new word coming in 2025. Perhaps it will not be resilient, but 2025 is the year in which we are gathering. And I want Barbadians to understand that in spite of this document and the delivery of the short presentation this morning, and I can say it now in Barbadian parlance, a washpan of taxpayers' money is going to be spent in this country next year in regathering, and it promises to culminate in a theme in November. And the theme for that month for the parish of St. Michael will be fetting and food. That's what this country will be reduced to next November, ma'am. We in St. Michael, or those in St. Michael who will lead a national celebration of regathering. They start in St. Lucy with faith. Oh, what virtue. Faith. And they will move through the year, and every month will have a theme. And every month will be associated with a parish. So St. Lucy, they've reserved unto the gentle and quiet people of St. Lucy, not well represented anyhow, with the theme of faith. But from the time when the honorable member leaves his theme of faith and is invited to St. Michael in November, he will be fetting and eating washpans of sauce. Fetting and food, and that is what this country, that is what this government threatens to reduce this country to next year. From faith to fetting and food. And we claim to be a civilized population under this government. That we move from faith and by the time November comes, 10 months later, all we can do as a country, all we can show ourselves to the world as are a people whose main indulgence is fetting and food. A wash pan of taxpayers' money we'll spend in this country next year. I want to ask the farmers, the fisher folk, the masons, the carpenters, the accountants, the lawyers, the engineers. How much of that money will be for you, Barbadians? Or is it an expedition aimed at returning this government to the favor of the people? I have a right to ask these questions. I have a right to ask these questions not based on fantasy, based on the truth. And the truth is that this government has set a program of national celebration for next year, which will culminate in a theme of fetting and food. And so that's why the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central delivers himself in the manner that he now does, making very little contact with economic policy. But everything is a nice dialectal anecdote. He's now speaking more Bajan than most Bajans. And perhaps it is charming. But I want to invite him, the Honourable Member, to come back to his sober reflections on the economy of this country. And in so doing, I will take him and this country to page 9 of the written document about which he spoke very little. Mid-page it says, the budget policy priorities. This is what I was given. Just being sure. It says, attached to it is a statement of responsibility. Those are heavy words. A statement of responsibility signed by the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. Curse me every week. I ain't stopping. Page 9 of the document, permit me, ma'am, this will take a little while, but I must do it. It ought to have been done by the Honourable Minister who spoke this morning. I'm going to do his job for him now. I quote, despite the slowing down of the global coronavirus pandemic, every paragraph, every sentence, every governmental disclosure, every public statement begins with the excuse that this country, this government, more than any other country, more than any other government, has been slowed by the pandemic. They have countries who've forgotten. How many people talk about the pandemic? Why does the government not leave this dialogue on the pandemic? Every serious document or every document that intends to be serious must begin with this excuse, oh, we can't do anything because of the pandemic. It has affected this government more than all the other governments across the Caribbean that have recovered and are doing well. But I'll read it again, ma'am. Beg your pardon? Oh, I heard it. There's a point of order, ma'am.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable Member has taken his seat, so I assume he's finished his speech, so I guess I will start mine. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join this debate. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Member took his seat. Madam Deputy Speaker.
No, I took my seat because
the Honourable Member took his seat in this Honourable Chamber When you take your seat,
That's how you can
you
stop me
have
from speaking
finished
today?
your speech.
No, you interrupted me, honorable
I
member.
did not interrupt.
I heard you speak,
No,
and I
Madam
sat
Deputy Speaker.
in anticipation of
I
a point
did
of
not
order.
interrupt.
Members.
The honourable member took his seat
Ma'am,
and
we're
finished
finding
his
all kinds of
speech.
creative ways to stop
And
me from
therefore,
talking
he
again.
was finished his speech. Therefore, I am in my rights to get up and start mine.
May I continue, ma'am? May
The
I
honourable member-
continue,
Madam Deputy
ma'am?
Speaker, the honourable member took his seat and therefore finished his speech. So therefore, if he's finished, I'm in my rights to start mine.
Honourable member, please let the honourable member from Christchurch.
The honorable member for
conclude
Christchurch
his
West has resolved it
presentation.
with laughter. The season of Christmas is upon us. Let peace reign. And let there be love. We love each other no less for these minor disputes. Permit me to continue, ma'am. Thank you. Despite the slowing down of the global coronavirus pandemic, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine now threatens to have a major impact on food security. The conflict in Russia and Ukraine has extended across Europe, England, the Atlantic, and has found its way into Barbados, and is affecting this country more than it is affecting Antigua, St. Lucia, Grenada, Jamaica, and St. Kitts. Permit me to continue, Your Honor. And they talk about food security. This government talks about food security in this document. And a few weeks ago, they closed down an agricultural station and is going to convert it to the building of what, ma'am? Don't let them fool you that it is for any low-income housing. Don't let them fool you, Your Honor. Perched as it is, overlooking the West Coast, not one low-income house is going to go there. We know what is going there. And we're going to tell the people of Barbados what is going there. Nestling right below the Holders complex, where the multimillionaires live, you're not going to put any low-income housing there, member? Ma'am, through you. The people in Barbados are going to find out in a few months. The build already? They built already? You know, ma'am, what an interesting admission. They built these things for the people and only acquired the lands 2 weeks ago. May I say, ma'am, so that the points of order can be made? Because two people can speak.
Honourable member, please continue.
Continue? Well, if I'm to continue, please ask the honourable member to let me continue. And these days, I am so sorry that the standing orders expert is absent. I'm not supposed to say who is absent, but I want him in here to help me to speak to his colleagues as the leading expert in the Caribbean on standing orders and tell them that when I'm speaking, 33 sub-rule 6 says that I will be heard in silence. But now we hear the admission that a government took over an agricultural station, put houses on it, they didn't put anybody in it yet, and then came to Parliament and acquired it. They say yes, I just heard an intervention that the houses.
On a point of order, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Remember for St. George South, please.
Merry Christmas to you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Season's greetings. And to the opposition leader.
Merry Christmas to you.
On a point of order, the lands, the resolution that came to Parliament a few weeks ago came to vest the lands in National Housing Corporation.
Why not hope? Sorry.
Not an acquisition. As an attorney at law, you would know very well, in an effort to give an individual the right to the title, you have to vest the land in the owner of the land, the persons who are executing the the project. And it gives the owner good title. And as an attorney, you know you cannot conduct a conveyance without good title. And that's why we came to vest the land in National Housing Corporation and not to acquire the lands. The lands were acquired eons ago. That's my point of order, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Question yourself.
I don't want to treat an engineer badly, but I will just gently say to him that when the land is vested in NHC, NHC becomes the owner. And it therefore stands to reason that if the construction was done, it was done on somebody else's land, that this government is walking about this country
Madam Deputy Speaker, on a point of order again. The land belongs to the government,
Point is taken, sir.
the state, Madam Deputy Speaker. And then the land was vested in NHC. That's what the resolution came, so we can give good title to the owners of the houses. The land was the property of the state, not somebody's land.
Point is taken. Remember?
The honorable member is not intending to delay me. I know I have a long time because the member who presented this morning only did his thing in half an hour, so I know I have a long time. I know I do. So that I am grateful for the clarification. I'm grateful for the clarification. But I went down there, yes, I'm going to deal with that in 15 minutes. It wasn't 56 here, there were 30. Nevertheless, Your Honor, we will see who will be put into those houses at Holders Hill. Bullings, yes, Bullings, Holders Hill. We will see. We will see. Yes, so we were reading government's budget policy priorities, which the honorable member for Christchurch East Central failed to read this morning. I'm going to do his job for him. Despite the slowing down of the global coronavirus pandemic, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine now threatens to have a major impact on food security and the cost of goods, and could continue to pose a major challenge to the economy and to have an impact on the balance of payments and fiscal accounts, full stop. So that the government is saying to the people of Barbados that what is happening in Ukraine is going to affect food security. So logically, you would expect that government would respond. If food security and prices are under threat, government would naturally respond by investing in local agriculture. Instead, the government converts an agricultural station to housing. For whom, we shall find out shortly, for whom that bell tolls, that bell of welcome into those luxurious suites. We will find out very shortly. But I don't think it's for anybody from Deacons Road, nor Ellerton, nor St. Martin's, nor Silver Hill. I don't think it is for them, but we will find out. Second sentence, a strong recovery from the global pandemic, and indeed the conflict, still hinge on accelerating structural reform, including improving the business climate and promoting economic diversification. Over the medium-term fiscal years 2023-24 to 2025-26, the budget will continue to support the following priorities and therefore create value for money for the citizens of Barbados. Here are the priorities, ma'am. Here are government's budget policy priorities. Number one, reducing poverty and inequality through the protection of the vulnerable. And I happily say that in the presence of the honorable member for St. Michael South, who continues to endure private discomfort in not having enough money in his ministry to feed the poor and to pay the rents for the unemployed, many of whom are among us. Welcome to the member for St. Michael South. And I said it before and I'll continue to say it. He cannot say it publicly, but I will say it for him, that he cannot be happy at the Prime Minister's travel bill. I know he's not happy. And if he's happy, there's a dissonance between his state of mind and the people in his constituency. And he describes himself as a people's person. It's people above politics. And I know he's not happy. I know that. I know that. And the honorable member for Christchurch East Central will one day come to this parliament and tell the people of Barbados what is the Prime Minister's travel bill. They don't feel like the people of Barbados are entitled to know. We love the speeches. They don't do anything for us. They don't lower the cost of living. They don't make more people go to church. They don't lower the crime rate, the murder rate. But there are people who love them. There are people in Jamaica who love them. There are people in Grenada probably who love them. And the numbers in Barbados who used to love those speeches are diminishing. Because Barbadians now recognize that all this travel and all these speeches have not allowed parents to send their children to school with a full stomach. And if it is a personal agenda, fine. But you must not pursue personal agendas on the taxpayers' money. And therefore, I will support the honorable member for St. Michael South if he wants his budget to move from 102 million to at least 180 million, like the Prime Minister's office. I would support him, but I don't expect him to make that private desire public. But I support him in his private wishes and desires to have a budget that will make his ministry look a little better. Can't be a pleasant thing to be in a crisis, an economic crisis, to be turning away people who are homeless, who are unhappy, who are hungry, whose children can't go to school a full week. It can't be a pleasant thing to turn them away. I saw some photographs this weekend of these luncheons or something, luncheon, whatever it is they do. That is now the ultimate. I didn't see any with you, Your Honor. I think your politics is slightly different. But men behind large pots, dishing rice and peas and stew and a spoonful of sauce. And that is the ultimate political expression in this country now. That you can bring some old women and a few children into a community center, give them a plate of rice. Fine. They leave there a little better off than when they came. But then you splash it all over social media and the people's face is there. St. Michael's House, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Yours is politics above people. I beg your pardon, people above politics, yes. Yes, I did that deliberately. I wanted to see if you were listening. I got your ear. People above politics. And the exercise of dishing a little portion of sauce is fine. But give them the dignity of some private celebration. Don't do that to them. I beg you. I know you mean well, honorable members. I know you mean well. But we are moving into 2025 and our relationship with the public must qualitatively change. And next year we will be focusing on dignity. The right of our constituents to a dignified relationship with their politicians and parliamentarians. But let me get back to government's budget policy priorities. And this statement dares to make the other statement that the government is interested in protecting the vulnerable. Again, I say, whichever part of the world people are, let them hear me. I'm not afraid. Is it Deuteronomy 31:6? Honorable member for Christchurch West, he is a man of God and he will check these things. Deuteronomy 31:6 tells me not to be afraid. Correct? Thank you. Told you he's a man of God. This government is not interested in protecting the vulnerable. The evidence is there. And when they want to impress the people of this country that they're interested in protecting the vulnerable, the numbers in terms of allocation between welfare and the Prime Minister's office will reverse. The 186 will become 102 and the 102 will become 186. I speak for the honorable member for St. Michael's South, who must, as a conscientious human being, more human being than a politician, if we are to take him at his word that people reside above politics, he will agree with me that there is an inherent unfairness in government's allocation of its resources to two important ministries. What does a speech in Jamaica? What does a speech in Jamaica? I'm going to say it now. Don't tell me I'm riling up anybody. What has that speech in Jamaica meant for the old man in Northumberland? That speech was made on public monies. It was made on public monies. Congratulations. The Jamaicans who heard it loved it. But the poor people in Barbados feeling it. And I'm supposed to come in here and be afraid to tell the truth? Because I'm supposed to be afraid. I'm supposed to be afraid of untruths told about me. Vile, vicious, malicious, and pernicious as they are. But Christchurch West reminds me, Deuteronomy 31:6. I read it this morning, A constituent sent it to me. They send me things every morning. Y'all don't know that. Y'all see me here alone and think I'm lonely. Because you don't see me in Dover on the pavilion step every other day. You think I'm not in the constituency? WhatsApp is a beautiful invention. And one sent me Deuteronomy 31:6 this morning. Correct? Yes. Commend it to your brothers and sisters. Because I know they're afraid too. And I try to indicate to them, stop being so afraid. The public wants them to stop being afraid because there's obvious wrongdoing in this government. And many of you and some of you are not the authors of that wrongdoing. Except that in the public estimation, you must take some responsibility for it.
On a point of order. The honourable member is clearly misleading the House. For him to say that there's obvious wrongdoing in this government, has not provided any evidence, has never provided, and there's no indication of such. The honourable member is clearly misleading the House with that statement, and I would ask that he withdraw it from the record.
Thank you. I will explain it. as I'm due so to do, and I appreciate the intervention. When I speak of the allocation of resources to respective ministries, and when I describe those allocations and misallocations as unfair, I am saying that the question of unfairness amounts to wrongdoing. That it is morally wrong to commit public resources to an expedition in speech-making, universal, international speech-making, when the poor people of this country want a meal. That is what I call wrongdoing. It is morally wrong. I am grateful for the intervention. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to explain, Your Honor, what I meant by that. I haven't accused anybody of other things which are also wrongdoing. I have not done that. No, I won't do that. I won't do that. We come to the second budget policy priority, increasing the long-term competitiveness of the tourism sector. Last week I stood up in here and made a point about the tourism sector. I criticized the government's initiative in appearing to benefit exclusively the coffers of the well-to-do. I did that. I had the courage to do that. And the honorable member for St. Peter, in response to my statement that community tourism should be taken seriously, informed the House and me that community tourism already exists, that I wasn't discovering the wheel. But I think the honorable member missed the point that I was making. Of course it does exist, and it exists in St. Peter at 6 Mains, as he said, as the honorable member said. But I was making the point that they're entitled to concessions too. And I think the honorable member missed that point. That if you're given a concession to a millionaire, multimillionaire, to put abstract art on the walls of his villa, or if you're given concessions to a multimillionaire to renovate a villa that he has had for 10 years and has made profits in the millions of dollars, that if you're giving concessions to him, you can give concessions to a man who has a little rum shop in Dover. Or my Lord's Hill, or Britain's Hill. That's all I was saying. Why is this word concession some precious word that is reserved for the wealthy? But a fellow with a rum shop, like the one in Paynes Bay, or the one in 6 Mains, and if they go to the shanty in Silver Hill and purchase an orange juice, the honorable member says they're welcome. But poor fellas, they can't get a concession. But you now have to associate yourself with this prestigious word, villa, in order to get a concession. And one day they're going to do an audit and discover that the majority of tourists experience social intercourse with the have-nots in this country. And I don't have to cite the case of Oistins and Dover. The honorable member for St. Peter cited 6 Mains. And if the honorable member for St. James South were a little more active, she may want to cite the case along the coast of St. James, that a lot of tourists in this country find their social intercourse and interaction among the ordinary people in this country. And the ordinary people in this country, the poor people in this country who run these establishments, have never been introduced to the language of concession. And that's the point. Concession is a word that's too good for them, that they must pay every tax through their nose. And a man who has had a villa for 10 years and made millions of dollars and wants to renovate that villa, the government will assist him. And that's the point that was, oh, I beg your pardon.
Deputy Chair of
stand,
the Senate of the Parliament, I rise on a point of order. I really don't like interrupting the member. He doesn't like to wax lyrical and often inaccurate or put out information that shows he has not done adequate or sufficient research, and therefore ends up misleading both himself and seeks to mislead the country. But small businesses in this country know that through the Small Business Development Act, that they have concessions on their inputs, that this is what the government has done to enable them to be able to run their businesses and to be able to be exempt from the import duties, etc. And this helps them to be able to build their businesses. Now, unfortunately, the member is not aware of some of these things. And just to correct something he said earlier, I'm not going to correct all because there are too many. They fall like snowflakes with a rapidity that, you know, can be mesmerizing to those who are uninformed, but I wouldn't want them to be. He has continually made reference to the Prime Minister's budget, Prime Minister's office budget of 189 million, comparing it with the one for welfare, and seeking to suggest that the 189 million is really spent on things that are non-essential to Barbadians and Barbadians' lives. I believe I spoke to this before and outlined that the Prime Minister's office has under it Future Barbados, Commitment for Results Department, the Residence, Planning and Development Department, Defense and Security, Barbados Defense Force, Cadet Corps, Assistance to Legionnaires, Anti-Corruption Unit, National Transformation Unit, Rural Development, Barbados National Gallery, Creative Economy, Film Censorship Board, Special Projects, and so on. HIV/AIDS, I could go on and on. There are more than 15 or so units under the Prime Minister's office that share $189 million. And so I would, if he is genuinely interested in whether or not money is fairly allocated, then he would be relieved at what I have to say. If it is just simply to make Barbadians feel that money is misallocated and misspent, then he will continue on his course, and therefore I would not have achieved anything except to help Barbadians to understand what happens in this government in terms of spending. I thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your point of clarification.
I have heard that feeble attempt at a breakdown before. I heard it during the budget debate from the Honorable Member for Christchurch East Central. He came in here and said, the Honorable Member, I beg your pardon, he came in here and said, the library and defense force. But, you know, the people of Barbados are entitled to know how much of that money is allocated to prime ministerial travel. Don't tell me about the defense force and the library. These vague statements. Tell the people of Barbados, when you're taking your WhatsApps, when you are taking, I beg your pardon, ma'am, when the honorable member has received the WhatsApp message, get a WhatsApp message and get up and tell the people in this country how much money has been spent on prime ministerial travel. Don't tell me no,
Sir,
no, I haven't started the word.
There must be utmost respect to
I have not started the word.
Sir, Sir, please, let us keep it tight. The
Keep it
public is listening. The children are listening.
The children are
This is the highest chamber. Let us keep it respectful.
Yes. I am so grateful for that point of order. That the House is now engaged in an exchange in which we are about to find out how much money is spent on prime ministerial travel from January to December, and if you don't like those dates, from April 1st to March 31st. Tell the people, tell them now. Let it turn up on the WhatsApp message. Send that message. The accountants can't get it calculated. The auditors cannot get it calculated. And no, we don't have a Freedom of Information Act that this government promised to pass. I know we don't have it. But in advance of the Freedom of Information Act, tell the poor people of Barbados how much of their dollars are being spent on the aircraft and the hotel and the massive per diems. Tell them, get back up and tell them. Don't tell them about the BDF. Don't tell them about the National Library Service. I bet you're speaking again?
But
Yes.
honorable member, please, I am understanding what is being said on both sides. And I got the impression for the honorable member for St. James South that reference is being made not just to the overall budget of that ministry encompasses all of those other areas we identified. Can we just move on then, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, ma'am. I am so obliged to you. Look,
And let
I
us
love
be a
these
little more
points of order.
tempered.
I love these points of order because they come to clear one thing and refuse to disclose another. And you smile, ma'am, because like me, you want to know how much they really spending on this luxury. You and I want to know, but I understand.
You cannot speak for me, sir.
No, I won't. But I know you are a conscientious citizen.
And I understand how estimates go.
Yes.
And I understand the heads that are under the various aspects of the estimates in each of the ministries, and that is made
Yes.
available to the public. So could we then please
Yes.
move on? Now
Yes,
that
ma'am.
the clarification has been made.
But you know,
and that
ma'am,
you have accepted
I'm
it,
obliged
sir?
to you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
But you know, ma'am, is it this government's position that the people in Barbados are not entitled to know this national secret as to how much money is spent on prime ministerial travel? The people in this country are not entitled to know that the prime minister is absent from this country at least once a month and sometimes twice. And it is paid for by the taxpayers of this country. Don't tell me how much is spent on the library. Tell me how much is spent for that plane to take off and land. And tell the people, and tell the welfare department, and tell the departments that had to send home people. Tell the people working in the court who got sent home, and the courts are under-equipped. Under-equipped. Because in the aftermath of an IMF program, when this government was talking about the delivery of justice, justice could not be delivered because the courts were understaffed. And tongue planning. And we sending home public servants in this country, and millions upon millions of dollars are being spent in prime ministerial travel. And the people of this country not entitled to know, interrupt me. I love the interruptions. And as for the rum shot in the Ivy, is the honourable member meaning to tell this parliament that the rum shops that the tourists go to are getting concessions? The honourable member knows that the small businesses that receive concessions, minor as they are, small as they are, when calculated cannot come close to the amount of concessions that are given in the tourism sector. The honourable member knows that. The honourable member knows that. But if they can't give the answer today, Madam Deputy Speaker, tell them to prepare the answer When next we come here, if God spare our lives, if God should spare our lives. That is what we used to say in the old days. You could not speak of the future unless you added, if God should spare our life. And if God should spare our life, I want the honorable member for St. James South to come back and tell the people in 2025 what she could not say in 2024. How much money is being spent on prime ministerial travel? It may be small, but it is not unimportant. It is not private monies. And even the courtesy of telling the people of this country when you're absent. We don't get that courtesy. Look at your WhatsApp. Tell me what they're telling you now. Because every time a point of order is made, it comes after WhatsApp. Come in here, spend some time in here. Come, spend some time in this country and spend some time in this parliament. And answer the questions. Don't send junior ministers to answer big questions. I come back to budget policy priorities. And we had dealt with the second one, increasing the long-term competitiveness of the tourism sector. Sounds good, sounds sweet, but how? How are you intending, how are you as a government intending to increase the long-term competitiveness of the tourism sector? Fine, we are building hotels and we are building villas. And I have asked this government, in spite of the intervention last week from the honorable member for St. Peter, to ask this government to seriously go into the communities of Barbados and consider that they are worthy of concessions too, and that the tourism can grow within the communities. That is simple. You don't have to have a $10 million villa to receive assistance. More tourists go in the communities than go in the $10 million villa. And the $10 million villa gets multi-millions in concessions and the little rum shop can't get one. Honorable member for St. James South. That is my response. Don't tell me about any small business sector. Those rum shops that are placed across the landscape of this country do not get any tax concessions. Thank you. And as to the reference, I was here saying for the whole morning 186 million. The honorable member got up and said it's 189 million. And what the honorable member has not told the people of Barbados is that the figure I have quoted is only part of the figure for the Ministry of Finance. Let us not hide it. There's another 180-something million dollars that goes to the Ministry of Finance. Oh, I thought a point of order was coming. They're moving now like guerrillas in the jungle of warfare. They jump in from behind trees and chairs and whispering, George Street. You know, I come to this job with a sense of humor. And I'm not going to let the stress kill me. So if I hear a good joke, I'm going to laugh too.
I do not
even
want,
if it's not myself.
I don't want anything to go wrong with you, sir.
I thank you, ma'am.
Let us please continue.
I thank you. But
You're
let the
welcome.
honorable member for St. James South tell the people of Barbados that the entire amount of monies allocated to the Ministry of Finance is not in the sum of $189. It is $300 and something million in the financial year. $300 and something million. Don't look at the honorable member for St. Michael South with apology. His don't move, 102. And that ministry gets over 300 million, well over $300 million. So when I say the 186, I was restricting the amount. It is twice that, ma'am. It is twice that. But I didn't want to, in the language of another member here, rile up the people. I didn't want to rile up the people. Don't rile up. Don't be riled up, people. It is more than 186 million. But I was trying to keep things calm. I didn't want the people of Barbados to get angry. I didn't want the people of Barbados to know that it is more than 186 million and is over 300 million. And that up to now, this open and transparent government can't tell the people how much money is paid to the commercial airlines to fly the Prime Minister from Japan to Java to Jamaica. What's so wrong with that information? They feel guilty? We're not entitled to know? If the US president sneezes, the people of the United States are given a report. Far less the cost of travel. The cost of travel is subject to public disclosure. What is so wrong, government? I want this government by December the 31st, 2024, tell the people of Barbados how much was spent in prime ministerial travel from January the 1st this year to December the 31st. And that is not a personal attack. That is a justified request for public disclosure as to the expenditure of public monies. That is no national secret. And the mere fact that they can't disclose it says that there is some kind of guilt. Not inquiring into any private business. This is public business. The public has a right to know. The public has a right to know. Three, this government claims that one of the priorities in its budget policy is to reduce unemployment by training staff and investing in renewable energy. Investing in renewable energy. And after all the sweet talk about a commitment to renewable energy, this government has not resolved the situation of battery storage to make energy in this country cheaper. And a few weeks ago when I got up in here and said that there seems to be a suspicious relationship between the Barbados government and the sole electricity utility provider, I was personally attacked, and I will not withdraw from that position, that there seems to be a suspicious relationship between the Barbados government and the Barbados Light and Power. And that government remains uncommitted to the question of renewable energy. And if it were so committed, it would have used its power and its influence to hasten the use of batteries for storage as a necessary part of the renewable energy enterprise. Government has done nothing apart from talk sweet. I said a few weeks ago in here that one of the thriving industries in Barbados is sweet talk. And the government seems to be the sole industrialist. Everything is subject to sweet talk. Everything sounds good. But does it feel good? Does it feel good to be poor in this country? Does it feel good to be poor in this country, to be underprivileged in a country where government is living high on the hog? I don't have a problem with the speeches. I don't have a problem with the high lifestyle. But can the country afford a high lifestyle among its government officials at the expense of the poor who can't get 3 meals a day? And for those who don't understand what is going on in this country, let me introduce this government to the reality of what is going on in this country. This is no exercise in gamesmanship. This is about the struggling lives of the people in this country. And I said it a few weeks ago and I'm going to repeat it. That Every member in this parliament, all 30 of us, know of abject poverty that is upon significant portions of our constituencies. Some will say, well, it is self-inflicted. Others will say it is inflicted by the more objective circumstances of bad government policy. Whatever it is, it exists. Whatever it is, it exists. And government cannot defend its prosperity in a climate and in an environment of severe austerity that visits the lives of too many in this country and the alleged social problems of crime. I said a few minutes ago that the greatest and the worst crisis, the worst crisis that has afflicted this country since 1966 is the crisis that this country now experiences, crime, which will affect tourism, and it will affect all aspects of our social life. That when a person above the age of 50 is now invited to an event that begins after 6 o'clock, he says, well, I'm not sure I'm going, including church, because of the fear of this scourge that has now visited the lives of people. Sweet talk. Reducing unemployment and training staff. And when they're talking about training staff, ask this government how many consultants. We don't have a Freedom of Information Act in this country as promised by the government, but tell the people of Barbados how many consultants are employed by this government and how much is the wage bill. Tell them. Tell the people of this country how many consultants you have. And what is the wage bill? They're not entitled to know. The people of this country are not entitled to know. Number 4, we come to our favorite word. We are strengthening resilience to natural disasters and climate change. Strengthening resilience to natural disasters and climate change. We've borrowed money for that. And I believe the only public disclosure made as to the expenditure of those monies are to be made on government's proudest project, the sewage plant. It was admitted in here that that has been and will be government's biggest investment in this local economy. Sewage. Number 5 is the review of the tax system to broaden the tax base and lower rates. Small wonder that the minister came here this morning and cracked some jokes. Because if the minister had not, in his dialectal expedition, charming as it was, in speaking about how he has no more hair on his head, as if that has some particular appeal to you, Your Honor, if he had not done that, he would have had to explain to the people of Barbados his promise to lower the rates of tax. And the people of this country have been bawling for the last few years, bawling and crying as to the high tax regime within which they live. And there are other countries with a high tax regime, but you see the delivery of services, Canada, England, National Health Service, Canada. You get sick, you're looked after. The Scandinavian countries who have socialist agendas. A lot of people don't know that. There are many ways in which they have been more socialist than the East. But we're not seeing in this country the results of high taxation. We're not seeing it. We're seeing a Queen Elizabeth Hospital on the verge of collapse. We're living in communities in which we cannot get our garbage collected until after 4 weeks. Our children are going into schools and are sent home for an entire term because the school is unfit for human habitation and we pay high taxes. The list is long, ma'am, and I shall not bore you with the litany of woe that attends this country. I shall not bore you. But this document says the significant reduction of tax expenditures. Then goes on to talk about the reform and transformation of SOEs. Where has this reformation and transformation of the state-owned enterprises taken place? What has happened in the Transport Board? What has happened there? When people in the bus stand crying at night, when the ZR stop running at 6 o'clock, what has happened to the guarantee of transportation that we used to have in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? What has happened to that guarantee? And why are so many of the buses of the Transport Board sitting immobile and disabled? Tell the people of the country these things. Don't come in here and sing a sweet song. Tell the people of this country that the public amenities of this country, funded by the state, are largely disabled. Tell the people of this country. Don't sing sweetly. Don't reinvent yourself from a sober technocrat into a sweet-sounding dialectal speaker for the sake of charm and personal appeal. It will not work in here. It may be of some usefulness in Wharton and Kingsland, but not in here. And that is not personal. This is about policy. And the point I make today is that the honorable member for Christchurch East Central has been unable to defend this document. And it is because he has been unable to defend this document that he has gone on an expedition in politicking. And the only virtue is that he has been extremely charming in so doing. But the people in Barbados cannot eat charm. They cannot take charm to the supermarket, even from the honorable member for Christchurch East Central. This country is in serious trouble. Very serious trouble. And you know, ma'am, this document dares to say that it will implement pension reform and a comprehensive procurement. I beg your pardon. I'll read it with my glasses. This government dares to tell the people of Barbados that it intends to implement pension reform and a comprehensive procurement framework after having denied the people, the old people of this country, their right of access and entitlement to the pensions for which they had paid during their working years, and they increased the pension age to 67 to further disadvantage the old people in this country, and they come here today talking about pension reform. This flies in the face of reality, and that is why the honorable member did not read it. And that's why he settled for telling the people of this country that their major investment now as citizens should be to buy a barrel of rum. That is the level to which this debate reduced. Buy yourselves a barrel of rum and all will be well in the state of Denmark. A barrel of rum. And he said it. Well, the expert on the standing orders, he may want to say that I'm not entitled to say this, but he said it and he he sat. That's as much as I can say. He said it and he sat. I hope that wherever he is, he's happy. This government promises the upkeep and renewal of the capital stock and expansion of the infrastructure necessary for investment. Pretty words. The industrialists in the manufacture of sweet words, and we living in this country now as sweet words. Transforming the public sector through fiscal and debt consolidation. And you know I'm tempted to say something, but I'm going to hold that back. Financial support and the facilitation of innovation and entrepreneurship. Oh, what sweet words. But here comes the reality, that these words mean nothing to the average man, woman, and child in Barbados. They mean absolutely nothing to him. Innovation, a government that decided to issue ID cards for all the citizens in this country, spent millions of dollars, and when the minister at the time was asked, but how much these ID cards cost, what is the cost of this scheme? The gentleman could not say. Something as basic as costs. He could not say. And now the scheme has been abandoned. And like the place down the hill in St. Peter, it's come to nothing. After presumably expending millions of dollars on an ID card scheme, that has gone the way of all flesh. Ladies and gentlemen of Barbados, ease your woes in the investment of a barrel of rum, is what this government has told you. 1 barrel of rum and you will become happy. He says you should not drink it. He said, keep it, and at some time in the future, you'll be able to sell it at a profit. Perhaps in a future speech, when he meets an unhappy population, he will tell them, well, take out a few sips and drown your sorrows. But he has left us today with that as a chief plank in government's economic policy, that every citizen now needs to buy a barrel of rum. I really did not come here today expecting to hear that. A barrel of rum, all he wants is a barrel of rum. I think that's a line from a song. But they were singing about a bottle. He has now elevated that to a barrel. I'm not going to let him forget those words and that advice. He used to be so sober, no pun intended. He used to be such a sober representative. Me too. Well, I'm not drinking any of that rum. Providing expenditure to facilitate the movement to, and this is in double quotations, to go green. When the honorable member for Christchurch West Central started to green Barbados, he was painting the benches green and blue. Which is a color compatible with the natural environment. We now live in a country in which someone has issued an edict for the national parks and open spaces to be repainted red. And this is a country going green. This is a government going green. And how do they explain the repainting of benches in the national parks? Not only is it aesthetically jarring to the eye, but it is a wasted expenditure. The honorable member painted those benches green and in some cases blue. And this government is spending additional monies to repaint them. Why is it so important? Why is it so important to a government to paint everything red? You and I know the answer. Your Honor, you and I know the answer. But I have the right of this microphone. You don't. And the country knows. And the country knows that it is not going to work. And the country knows that we will articulate it from here until the time comes. That this government seeks to impress people as to its legitimacy only through propaganda. Ask the children at Foundation School why they go to assembly on mornings and stand on a red floor, when a few weeks earlier they were standing on a floor of the more custom colors, and they were sitting outside on benches that were not red, and now they're sitting on red benches. It may be subtle, but it is no less potent as a means of propaganda into the minds of the young children of this country. Paint the town red, they call it. Paint the town red. This objective of the government is the one that will make us not laugh, but make us afraid. This government, at the bottom of page 9, tells the people of this country that it will enhance food production and food security. I'm looking around to see who likes black belly sheep. A few years ago, black belly lamb leg used to cost $120. Even if you have $240 now, you can't find one. Some well-to-do politician in Guyana eating all. Since 2018, we have never seen supermarket shelves so depleted. Since 2018, we have, I do not think, experienced a poultry shortage. Since 2018, we have not experienced an egg shortage. Since 2018, we did not have to ask a minister to beg a manufacturer, a producer, on hands and knees, please take 8 cents off that egg. My political life will end if you don't. And they gave sustenance to his political life by taking 8 cents off of an egg. That's what we've come to in Barbados. So that this government cannot with any credibility speak of food production and food security, exporting our sheep without explanation, undermining our food security. Our food security is sacrificed at the altar of cement. And I say again, when you're turning agricultural stations into expensive housing units, this government has no credibility on the issue of food security and food production, when the very governor of the central bank a few weeks ago, in his report, said that agriculture is in decline and that the staple called sweet potato, its production was also in decline. And as I said before, a man is not going to go to the top of Broad Street out there one morning and say all the food gone. It will not be announced with a bang, but the whimpers of food insecurity are being heard presently. And the consequence of the shortage of food is the increase in prices. And that's why the honorable member for St. Philip South had to go to a major producer and beg, please, for the sake of the life of this government, please take 8 cents off of that egg. Christmas is coming. Please take 8 cents off that egg. And that is what government in Barbados has become. We're short on food. There's a consequential rise in prices. And that is why the minister, who will congratulate himself, had to do what he had to do. The evidence is there. The evidence is there. And so one of this government's major failures is on the issue of food production and food security. But what do you expect when the honorable member for St. George South tells you that he's going to build 10,000 houses? And clearly it does not matter to him where he builds them. If he has to destroy an agricultural station to do it, he will. He will. He has a bulldozer, and he is going to push down every agricultural station in Barbados because he wants 10,000 houses. So we come to the, oh, I beg your pardon.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Speaker, I really didn't want to raise on a point of order, and I will opt not to, because I know the public is listening and they're realizing every time the member speaks, that he is misleading this chamber as it relates to the Bullings project. I don't know what bulldozers can be pushing down agricultural station when almost 30 houses are down there. Others, the foundations are being put up. But that is not why I rose, ma'am. I think the honourable member would appreciate that we have some elderly persons amidst us and persons who obviously are diabetic as well. Sure. Given the time, I would ask if we can pause for perhaps an hour, a shorter period for lunch, if that is good for him as well. And we will come back and resume his continuous misleading of the public after we've had something to eat. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, with that, I would ask for a short suspension of 1 hour until 2:30 p.m., where we will resume debate on this particular bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you accommodate me with an hour and 15 minutes? Yes.
All right, ma'am, we can go the extra 15 minutes. Thank you.
All members, the question is that we don't break for lunch for 1 hour and 15 minutes until 2:45 p.m. this afternoon. All of the members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber is now suspended until 2:45 p.m. for lunch.